Hello guys. Welcome back to ABC General Hospital Spoilers channel. Today, we delve into one of the most shocking developments in Port Charles history, a catastrophic tragedy that has left the Corinthos family shattered and the entire town reeling. In recent episodes, what began as Jason Morgan's noble attempt to help Sasha Gilmore escape her troubles with Michael has resulted in an unthinkable disaster that has forever changed the lives of everyone involved. The story unfolded when Sasha made the difficult decision to leave Port Charles with her newborn daughter, Daisy, seeking refuge from the mounting tensions and dangers that had surrounded her life. After experiencing what she believed were targeted threats against her child, her fears were not unfounded. Willow Corinthos had been secretly tormenting Sasha by moving the baby, creating psychological warfare designed to make Sasha question her own sanity. Jason's fatal decision to help. When Sasha expressed her desperate need to leave town, Jason Morgan stepped forward as her protector. The arrangement was supposed to be temporary. Jason would escort Sasha and baby Daisy to a safe location where she could start fresh, while he would eventually return to Port Charles. This gesture came at Michael's request, as he understood the gravity of the situation, but was unable to accompany them due to his own complicated circumstances. The plan seemed straightforward enough. Jason, ever the loyal friend and protector, agreed to ensure Sasha's safe passage out of Port Charles. They boarded a private aircraft together, with Sasha cradling baby Daisy, both hoping for a chance at a peaceful new beginning away from the chaos that had consumed their lives. Jason's intention was clear. He would see them safely to their destination, and then return to face whatever challenges awaited him in Port Charles. The catastrophic flight. As the plane ascended into the sky, carrying its precious cargo of hope and new beginnings, tragedy struck without warning. The aircraft suddenly encountered severe mechanical difficulties at high altitude. What should have been a routine flight to safety became a nightmare scenario that would haunt Port Charles forever. The plane experienced catastrophic failure, exploding in midair with devastating force that left no possibility of survival. The explosion was swift and complete, consuming the aircraft and all aboard in an instant. There was no time for emergency procedures, no chance for heroic last-minute rescues. The plane simply disintegrated, taking with it Jason Morgan, Sasha Gilmore, and innocent baby Daisy. 3 lives cut tragically short in what was supposed to be an act of protection and love. The devastating news reaches Port Charles. The news of the plane crash reached Port Charles like a thunderbolt, shattering the lives of everyone connected to the victims. Michael Corinthos, already dealing with his own recovery from severe burns sustained in the penthouse explosion, was among the first to receive the heartbreaking confirmation. The man who had been fighting to rebuild his life and maintain custody of his children was now faced with the unthinkable reality that he had lost both Sasha and his newborn daughter Daisy. The impact on Michael was immediate and devastating. Here was a man who had already endured tremendous physical and emotional trauma, watching his relationship with Willow crumble amid accusations of betrayal and manipulation. Now, in a cruel twist of fate, his attempt to protect Sasha and their child had led directly to their deaths. The guilt consumed him. If he hadn't asked Jason to help, if he had found another solution, if he had somehow been able to accompany them himself, perhaps this tragedy could have been avoided. Carly's anguish over Jason's loss. For Carly Spencer, the loss of Jason Morgan represented the death of more than just a friend. It was the loss of her closest confidant, protector, and the one person who had always been there when she needed him most. Jason's relationship with Carly had been one of the most enduring and significant connections in Port Charles, spanning decades of shared struggles, triumphs, and unwavering loyalty. The news hit Carly with the force of a physical blow. Jason had been her anchor through countless storms, the steady presence who could always be counted upon to put her family's safety above all else. His decision to help Sasha had been entirely in character. Jason never hesitated when someone needed protection, especially when that someone was connected to the Corinthos family. But now that noble instinct had cost him his life, leaving Carly to grapple with a grief so profound it threatened to consume her entirely. Sonny's heartbreak and rage. Perhaps no one was more devastated by Jason's death than Sonny Corinthos himself. Jason hadn't just been Sonny's enforcer or business partner, he had been the brother Sonny had chosen, the one person whose loyalty was absolute and whose judgment was beyond question. Their bond had weathered every storm Port Charles could throw at them, from mob wars to family crises to personal betrayals. The loss struck Sonny at his core, particularly given his own recent health struggles with heart problems that had already been weighing heavily on his mind. Jason's death represented not just the loss of his most trusted ally, but the severing of a connection that had defined much of Sonny's adult life. The man who had always been able to compartmentalize his emotions found himself overwhelmed by grief and a burning need for answers about how this tragedy had occurred. Sonny's pain quickly transformed into rage as he began to suspect that Jason's death might not have been the accident it appeared to be. His instincts, honed by years of navigating the dangerous world of organized crime, told him that such convenient timing and devastating results might indicate enemy action rather than mechanical failure. The possibility that someone had orchestrated this tragedy as an attack on his family only intensified Sonny's anguish and his determination to uncover the truth. The impossible funeral arrangements. The prospect of planning funerals for Jason, Sasha, and baby Daisy presented an almost insurmountable emotional challenge for the grieving families. How do you say goodbye to 3 lives cut so tragically short, especially when one of those lives had barely begun? The logistics alone were overwhelming. With the plane explosion leaving no recoverable remains, the families faced the prospect of memorial services rather than traditional burials. The ceremonies would need to capture the essence of who Jason, Sasha, and Daisy had been and what they had meant to their loved ones. For Jason, it meant honoring decades of loyalty, sacrifice, and protection of those he cared about. For Sasha, it meant remembering a woman who had struggled valiantly to overcome addiction, loss, and betrayal while trying to build a better life for herself and her child. For baby Daisy, it meant mourning the potential of a life that would never be realized, the milestones that would never be celebrated, the love that would never be fully expressed. Michael's spiral into guilt and self-blame. The aftermath of the tragedy left Michael Corinthos drowning in self-recrimination. Every decision he had made in the weeks leading up to the crash now seemed fraught with catastrophic consequences. His request for Jason's help, his inability to accompany Sasha and Daisy himself, his failure to find an alternative solution, all of these choices now felt like steps leading inevitably to disaster. Michael's guilt was compounded by the complex emotions surrounding his relationship with Sasha. Their night together had been born out of mutual pain and loneliness, a momentary escape from their respective struggles that had resulted in Daisy's conception. Now, instead of being able to work through their complicated feelings and potentially build something meaningful together, Michael was left with nothing but regret and the haunting knowledge that his actions had set in motion the events that led to their deaths. The physical injuries Michael had sustained in the earlier penthouse explosion paled in comparison to the emotional devastation he now faced. Recovery from burns could be measured and tracked. Recovery from the loss of his child and the woman who had borne her seemed impossible to even contemplate. Port Charles reels from the triple loss. The impact of the tragedy extended far beyond the immediate family members. Port Charles had lost 3 of its residents in one devastating moment, creating ripples of grief throughout the community. Jason's death, in particular, left a void that would be felt by virtually everyone in town. His role as protector, mediator, and steady presence had touched countless lives over the years. For the younger generation, particularly those who had looked up to Jason as a father figure or mentor, his loss represented the end of an era. His children, especially Danny and Jake, would have to navigate their grief while trying to understand how the man they had counted on to always come home had been taken from them so suddenly and completely. The lingering questions and conspiracy theories. In the immediate aftermath of the tragedy, questions began to emerge about the true cause of the plane crash. While mechanical failure was the initial explanation, the timing and circumstances struck many as suspiciously convenient for the Corinthos family's enemies. Jason had been making powerful adversaries, and his decision to leave Port Charles, even temporarily, might have been seen as an opportunity by those who wanted him eliminated. The possibility that the crash had been sabotage rather than accident opened up a whole new dimension of horror for the grieving families. If Jason, Sasha, and Daisy had been murdered, it meant that their deaths were not just tragic but preventable. It also meant that the killer was still out there, potentially planning additional attacks on the Corinthos organization. Sonny's investigative instincts were already pushing him to dig deeper into the circumstances surrounding the crash. His contacts in various industries could provide access to crash investigators, maintenance records, and other evidence that might reveal whether the plane had been tampered with. The prospect of hunting down those responsible gave Sonny a focus for his grief and rage, channeling his devastation into a quest for justice. The broader implications for Port Charles. The loss of Jason Morgan represented more than just a personal tragedy for his friends and family. It marked a seismic shift in the power dynamics of Port Charles. Jason had been the enforcement arm of the Corinthos organization, the man whose reputation alone was often enough to deter potential threats. His death left a significant power vacuum that various enemies would likely attempt to exploit. The timing of Jason's death, coming as Sonny was already dealing with health issues and Michael was recovering from his own injuries, created an unprecedented vulnerability for the Corinthos family. Their enemies would undoubtedly view this as an opportunity to strike while the organization was weakened and mourning. For the legitimate businesses and residents of Port Charles, Jason's death meant the loss of an unofficial guardian who had often stood between them and the more dangerous elements of the criminal underworld. His unique position as someone who could work within both the legal and illegal spheres of Port Charles society had made him an invaluable mediator and protector. The question of survival and soap opera possibilities. Despite the devastating nature of the plane explosion and the apparent certainty of the deaths, the world of soap operas has long been known for its ability to resurrect characters in unexpected ways. The fact that no bodies were recovered from the crash site leaves open the theoretical possibility that Jason, Sasha, and Daisy might have somehow survived the seemingly insurvivable. In the realm of daytime drama, plane crashes have historically provided opportunities for characters to disappear temporarily, only to return months or years later with dramatic explanations for their survival. Secret rescue operations, amnesia, imprisonment by enemies, or being taken in by unknown benefactors are all potential storylines that could explain how someone might survive such a catastrophic event. The show's writers have created enough ambiguity around the crash to leave room for future plot developments. Jason, in particular, has a long history of surviving supposedly fatal situations, and his return from presumed death has been a recurring theme throughout his time on General Hospital. While the current evidence strongly suggests that all 3 passengers perished in the explosion, the soap opera genre's flexibility with such situations means that definitive closure may be premature. The emotional aftermath and character development. The tragedy has created numerous opportunities for character development and exploration of grief across multiple storylines. Michael's survivor's guilt and self-blame could drive him toward either self-destructive behavior or renewed commitment to honoring the memory of those he's lost. His journey through grief could provide rich material for examining how trauma affects decision-making and relationships. Carly's loss of Jason represents the end of one of the show's most enduring relationships, forcing her to navigate Port Charles without her most reliable ally. This could lead to either increased independence and self-reliance or dangerous alliances with less trustworthy characters as she seeks to fill the void Jason's protection had provided. Sonny's response to Jason's death, particularly if it proves to be murder rather than accident, could reignite the more ruthless aspects of his personality that had been tempered by Jason's moderating influence. Without Jason's counsel and support, Sonny might make increasingly dangerous decisions driven by grief and vengeance rather than strategic thinking. The legacy of love and sacrifice. Perhaps the most tragic aspect of this storyline is how it transforms an act of love and protection into a source of devastating loss. Jason's decision to help Sasha was motivated by his loyalty to Michael and his desire to protect an innocent child. Sasha's determination to leave Port Charles came from her maternal instincts to shield Daisy from harm. These noble motivations make their deaths all the more heartbreaking, as they died trying to do the right thing. The baby Daisy represents the most innocent victim in this tragedy, a child whose life was ended before she had the chance to form memories or relationships beyond those with her mother. Her death serves as a stark reminder of how violence and danger in Port Charles affect not just those who choose to participate in criminal activities, but the innocent family members who become collateral damage. Looking forward, the ripple effects. The ramifications of this triple tragedy will undoubtedly continue to unfold across multiple storylines and character arcs. The investigation into the crash's cause, the power vacuum left by Jason's absence, and the emotional healing required by the survivors all provide rich narrative possibilities for future episodes. The show must also address how this loss affects the broader community of Port Charles. From the hospital staff who knew and worked with these characters to the business owners who relied on the stability that Jason's presence provided, the ripple effects of such a significant loss would realistically touch every corner of the fictional town. Conclusion: a defining moment for General Hospital. This tragic plane crash represents one of General Hospital's most devastating storylines, combining multiple character deaths with the destruction of key relationships and the creation of new conflicts and challenges. The loss of Jason Morgan alone would have been sufficient to reshape the show's dynamics, but the additional deaths of Sasha and baby Daisy compound the tragedy exponentially. Whether this storyline will stand as a permanent turning point or whether future episodes will reveal survival scenarios remains to be seen. What is certain is that the emotional impact of these losses will reverberate through Port Charles for months or even years to come, affecting not just the immediate family members but the entire community that had come to depend on these characters. The story serves as a powerful reminder of how quickly life can change in the world of soap operas, where acts of love and protection can lead to devastating consequences, and where the attempt to escape danger can result in the very tragedy one was trying to avoid. As the residents of Port Charles struggle to come to terms with their losses and move forward, viewers can only wait to see whether hope will ultimately triumph over despair in this ongoing saga of love, loss, and the unbreakable bonds of family.